Skype with vocalist Fernando Ribiero of Portuguese Moonspell. The band has a new album coming out on Napalm Records called Extinct. So thanks for taking the time to talk with We Love Metal today.
No problem, my pleasure.
I'm going to back up. Your last album, Alpha Noir, was one of my very first reviews when I started doing music blogging. I was maybe a little apprehensive at the time because Moonspell's musical style was different than what I typically listen to in heavy metal. That said, I loved the album, and it was in my end-of-year top 10 that year. So I've been looking forward to Extinct. The new album immediately strikes me as being both typical Moonspell sounding, but also a little more commercially accessible at times. Was that something you guys tried to go for, or it just worked out like that?
I think in a way it was a natural step after Alpha Noir. You know, Alpha Noir was an angrier album. It was an album that definitely was more electric in a way, while this album turned to be a little bit more of personal album, not so much fiction, you know, not so much like big feelings, but rather more personal feelings. And I think the music just follow a little bit that lead. It's definitely more moody, you know, things are much more clear, you know, everything intertwines on a different way. And it's a quite fragile at the times melodic album. And also I think we have reintroduced from, you know, our late 90s album with certain rock feeling into it. So for us, it's kind of sounds more of a natural album, more of a musical album that was conceived definitely differently from especially the latest effort, Alpha Noir. It's an album that, in our opinion, has more stuff to discover. It's more exuberant in a way, and it's definitely on a more melodic vein than the last album.
Yeah, there's a I would say an 80s almost influence at times. Not like 80s hair metal, but almost an 80s alternative kind of rock feel at times. Is that an influence that you guys look to or grew up with?
Well, yeah, I mean, besides all the metal roots we have.
Sure.
Especially myself, on high school, I was always very into much the dark indie bands like Bauhaus, Sisters of Mercy, you know, Fields of the Nephilim, and it was something I grew up with as well. And there was all these very interesting 80 bands, even though they were massive and commercial. I always looked up also to bands like Depeche Mode. You know, they always wrote excellent songs, and they have influenced generations and generations, even from as far as rock musicians. So that's definitely an influence for us as well. And then I think metal, especially in Europe in the 90s, kind of fused with a little bit of this you know, alternative indie goth thing. And this is a very popular band was Type O Negative. You know, they were coming from a more hardcore basis, but they had all this gothic stuff around it, and we were just starting at the time, and we had the chance also to tour with Type O Negative back in the day, in '96. It was the first tour we did with them, and we kind of got really hooked also to that sound, which was definitely not your classic power metal, but something, that came from a lot of fusions, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, I have to say, every once in a while, I think I hear a little bit of Pete Steele in your clean singing, so you've kind of got that baritone, kind of the same feel.
So. He was such a great singer, and definitely great inspiration for me. Yeah. Definitely, hands down.
Hey, on Extinct, a couple times I get a Middle Eastern kind of vibe. I don't know if you guys have done that in the past much or not. Is that a new influence or?
Well, we did that on a kind of an ancient path for Moonspell when we started off in 1994. We did black metal, and we put all these oriental scales into it as well, because in Portugal we all also grew up listening to it in a way. Even our traditional music, you know, it's very close. Some scales, you know, some instruments, and you know. But actually, our music evolved in different ways. We always had this ethnic thing, especially from Portuguese music. But when we started writing, especially songs like Medusalam or Breathe, we could feel already this Oriental influence that, for instance, Mercy used on songs like Temple of Love, to create this exuberant, exotic, more like 1,000 Nights feeling that really fits in our music, because it gives it, I would say, a little bit of this cinematic quality.
Yeah.
It's the use of strings. It's like transports you to an atmosphere that is really, outstanding in a way. And I think that arrangement also felt exactly as we wanted, also when we were trying to have a little bit more of exuberant arrangements, also to spice up some parts of the extinct songs.
Yeah. No, okay. No, that it definitely works, and the orchestral elements too kind of come together to give it that big feel, like you say. It's really well done. So, of course, yeah, I talked about Alpha Noir a little, and most people have a favorite song on albums, and mine happens to be the title track, which really comes across as the heaviest one too. Can you tell a little bit about that song?
Well, the title track actually, came up along, the middle of when we were like songwriting for the album, and it came out really as a very strong and even dirty song, in a way. And then we started. The song was different. It had all this drive that has more aggressive and into it. But then all of a sudden I came up with a chorus that is more melodic, and it's a little bit more epic. And I think the contrast of that song made it really to stand out, and also because it's the title track.
Right.
We picked it up for our video clip, the official one, with the band playing and with the extras, because we feel it's a song with very strong emotions. And I always thought that the title track had to be a little bit stronger. There's more responsibility, when you do a title track.
Right.
You cannot get away with doing like a mediocre song. You really have to, to stand up for that song. So it's definitely a song that has a different drive, and it's the more in your face song from Extinct that has that side as well, but it's also very combined with the more melodic chorus and something that goes to other atmosphere.
Yeah, I think you guys do that combination quite a bit on the album, like a very melodic verse and then a strong kind of more, well, for you, growling type of chorus, and it's almost a recipe that you guys have for your songs. Not that it becomes predictable, but it's kind of the way I heard the album develop.
Yeah, I mean, Moonspell has always been, even since the early days, a little bit working on a contrast.
Sure.
And in some songs we have tried exactly the opposite. In some albums to do like stronger verses against a chorus that instead of going up a little bit down or just open more. But with the experience and with the songs you do, and also when you put yourself and when you face your own music, I feel Moonspell, it's definitely at our best when we do that kind of contrast between the a little bit more of subdued verse and a bigger chorus to focus there. We are always since the beginning very song oriented. That for a metal band times it's a weird thing, but I always liked even classic metal with I wouldn't say classic song structure. I always like the B parts and the C parts where these huge bass solos or keyboards get in, but I also liked the kind of a format of the song, and we're always very inspired by it on the way as a band.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you happen to have a current favorite song from the album?
Well, yeah, I think so. The Future is Dark. It's
okay.
It's a very sad, desolate song. It's also like a letter I wrote to my son, who is almost 3 years old. You know, when with being a father, you know, there's a lot of other stuff that starts happening in your life, and it's like, even, you know, like the Spider-Man Stanley saying, with the greater power come greater responsibility. So
right.
It's a kind of a very personal lyric telling him, you know, that life is not as bright, you know, and that the light is not always there, and we have to fight for it. And there's people fighting against each other to get to the light. So in a few years you will listen to it. But for me, as right now, as a father and as a musician that, you know, expresses himself through the means of music, in this case, through the means of Extincta, the new Moonspell album, was a very important thing for me to do right now. And I think music also always serves that you know, self-expression, that purpose, which is probably the most noble thing, the noblest thing you can do when you are a musician. You know, it's like your true emotions on a song.
Sure. It can expose you to a lot, but the payoff can be great as well. So, yeah.
I think so. I mean, actually, when you do it like on a, let's say, metaphoric way, or even if it's a more personal thing, I kind of miss that on music. You know, it's like nowadays it's just fiction, or even for our kind of metal, the lyrics are always very fantasy driven, and I kind of miss that. You know, adult pain of bands such as Typo, Everyone I Love Is Dead, stuff like that. And I kind of follow that way also with The Future Is Dark. Yeah, it's a personal song, but I think musically, and just for the fact of doing that song, for sure I have more to, you know, gain than to lose with even if I'm exposing myself a little bit more than if I wrote about, you know, vampires or werewolves, like sometimes I do.
yeah, and that's okay. So, yeah. It's you know, another medium for entertainment, because that's what it ultimately is for the fans. So, wanted to ask about your personal music experience. How did you get into singing? Was it something in school, or how did you develop as a musician and get into metal?
Well, I mean, I was a metal fan before being a musician, and I had a fanzine. So I was trying to get into the scene, but and I knew a lot of people from all around the world. It was a time before the internet, but we all pan friends. And there was this blossoming underground scene all around the world with metal and gothic bands and many bands mixing stuff. And we decided to make our own band in Portugal back in '89. We were called Morbid God. Then in '92 we changed for our actual name, Moonspell. And I don't know why or how I really became the singer. I remember that I wrote some lyrics that the guys liked. And the theory is that if you write the lyrics, you're going to sing them. I said, well, okay, so let's do it. And in the end of the day, you know, I just started adapting to what the band needed. If they needed a more growling vocal or a melodic vocal, I always tried to do, you know, also with the lyrics, the different atmospheres and different contrasts. And then I always tried to challenge myself as a singer to learn a little bit more, to work on my accent as well, because I'm from Portugal, so I'm not, you know, a native English-speaking person, but that's the language we chose to express ourselves, and also helps us to communicate more our lyrics with everybody in the world that actually speaks English, and that's why our fans, you know, share the lyrics between them. It's the language of rock and metal as well. So I eventually just, you know, when I stopped to think about it, I was already singing on tour. So there was no way of getting back, and I'm always open, you know, to learn more. And with Extinct, I definitely try to improve my vocals a lot, also to serve, you know, the more let's say elaborate and a little bit the step up the other guys gave as songwriters and musicians themselves.
Okay. Speaking about singing on tour, you guys toured North America about a year ago. Any upcoming tour plans for you guys over here, or what? I haven't seen anything yet, so.
Well, we just announced a couple of weeks ago just that we are going to tour North America together with Septic Flesh and Moonspell. We will be co-headlining, and we will have Death Stars. But we still haven't released the dates. You know,
okay.
We're just working on the final touches to release them properly online. But we are starting off. We are doing a European tour before that, together with Septic Flesh as well. And then we'll start the tour in Mexico City on the 24th of April, and then we go to the US and Canada for the rest of the tour. That is going to be probably from the 25th of April up to the 20th of May, something like this.
All right, so you'll miss out on our beautiful temperatures during this time of the year.
Well, actually, we had our share of winter tours, you know, and the last couple of times we've been in the States, you know, we had cancellations, we had a lot of stuff to deal with because it was snowing even in northern Florida, you know, and you know, some states were not prepared at all to get snow. I remember being in Portland, Oregon, and there was some snow that for sure for Chicago standards wouldn't be, you know, a big deal.
Right.
But they weren't just prepared, you know, with the right equipment and to make it happen, you know.
Sure.
So we had to cancel that gig and the gig after. So I'm quite very happy that we are going to tour on the Springs, and it's a nice time for people to come out to a show as well. Sometimes, you know, I really appreciate, especially the Chicago fans that come out in really bad, you know, weekdays and very lousy weather conditions, and they still pack up the room. So I expect spring, you know, to make it easier on everyone.
All right. Hey, all right, Fernando. Final question for you. Our website is called We Love Metal. So why do you love metal?
Well, I love metal because it's challenging, you know, because it definitely tells stories about places, people, events that I always, as a curious person myself, that I always wanted to explore in a way. And when metal also gets personal, you know, with all the great ballads of, you know, classic metal or other stuff like the Type O Negative we talked about, is also a great way of sharing and reflecting your own emotions, and to find out that you're not alone on this world, you know, and that sense of companionship was also something I searched and definitely found on the metal music and all its, you know, large spectrum of influences in all the genres of metal that came up from, you know, good old heavy metal.
Okay. All right. Well, again, thanks for taking the time.
No problem. My pleasure.
And to all the listeners out there, be sure to check out Extinct. And I'll be reviewing it very soon.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Rock on. Thank you. Bye-bye.